Marcus Chin sat on the worn bench outside the Imperial Fleet's personnel office, staring at the small data pad in his weathered hands. After 42 years of service, it all came down to this single document with red letters stamped across the top: Termination Age Efficiency Protocol. The door hissed open and a young Zentari administrator stepped out, his blue scales gleaming under the station's bright lights. Veltrak barely looked at the old human as he adjusted his pristine uniform. "Mr. Chin, your final pay cycle has been processed. Your quarters must be vacated within 3 standard days," Veltrak said, his voice carrying the clipped tone of someone who had already moved on to more important matters. Marcus stood slowly, his knees protesting after decades of crawling through engine compartments. "That fusion core in Bay 7, he said quietly. "It's got a harmonic drift in the lower magnetic coils. You'll want to recalibrate it manually, not with the automatic systems." Veltrak waved a dismissive hand. "The diagnostic AI monitors all systems continuously. If there were a problem, it would alert us. That is precisely why we are implementing these efficiency improvements. Modern systems don't require outdated methods. I rebuilt that core myself during the Frontier Wars," Marcus continued, though he knew it was pointless. "Sometimes the old girls need a different touch. The sensors can't always." "Your dedication is noted in your file," Veltrak interrupted, already turning away. "But the Empire must evolve. We cannot cling to the past simply because it is familiar. Your replacement team is far more cost-effective and trained in current protocols." Marcus watched the young administrator disappear down the corridor. Around him, the massive Imperial dreadnought hummed with life. The Sovereign's Glory had been his home for 18 years. He knew every deck, every conduit, every quirk of her ancient systems. His hands carried the scars to prove it: burns from plasma leaks, cuts from sharp metal edges, calluses from decades of wielding torque wrenches in impossible spaces. A soft chime sounded nearby. Marcus turned to see Chief Engineer Sarnell approaching, the elderly Corthan's 6 arms moving in a gesture of respect. "Marcus, my friend," Sarnell said, his gravelly voice tinged with sadness. "I argued against this decision. I told them you hold knowledge that exists in no database." Marcus managed a tired smile. "Times change, old friend. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am too old for this." "You still have fire in your belly," Sarnell replied. "I have seen you repair systems that our brightest engineers declared impossible to fix. But the young ones, they trust their computers more than their hands." They stood together in silence, watching through the massive viewport as cargo ships drifted past. Beyond them, Earth hung like a blue marble in the darkness. Marcus's birth world, where he would now return after spending most of his adult life among the stars. "The Emperor is planning his ceremonial voyage next month," Sarnell mentioned. "To the Concordance Summit. The Sovereign's Glory will carry representatives from 47 species." Marcus nodded. He had helped prepare for such voyages 100 times. "She'll do fine. Just remember what I said about that core in Bay 7. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the departure bay with a single travel case containing everything he owned. As the transport shuttle powered up its engines, he took one last look at the Sovereign's Glory. Her hull stretched nearly 2 kilometers, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays, a masterpiece of engineering that had served the Empire for over 2 centuries. Somewhere deep in her belly, fusion cores older than most of the crew hummed their ancient song. Marcus had learned to hear their voices, to understand their moods, to feel when something wasn't quite right. It was knowledge earned through decades of skinned knuckles and late-night emergencies, the kind of wisdom that couldn't be programmed into even the most advanced AI. As the shuttle pulled away, carrying him toward retirement on Mars Station, Marcus had no idea that in 3 months, that very knowledge would become the only thing standing between the Emperor and catastrophe. The Sovereign's Glory slipped into hyperspace like a knife cutting through silk. Inside the Grand Observation Hall, Emperor Zalthor stood among delegates from dozens of worlds, all traveling to the Concordance Summit. The ancient Zentari ruler's scales had faded to silver with age, but his eyes remained sharp as he gazed at the swirling colors of hyperspace beyond the windows. Deep in the engineering decks, warning lights began to flash. Junior engineer Kixera stared at her display panel, her young face tight with confusion. "Chief Sarnell, I'm reading temperature spikes in Fusion Core 7. The magnetic containment field is fluctuating." Sarnell moved to her station with surprising speed for someone his age. His multiple eyes scanned the data, and his heart began to beat faster. "Run full diagnostics. Engage the automatic stabilization protocols." The AI systems activated immediately, making thousands of calculations per second. Cooling systems ramped up. Magnetic field generators adjusted their output. But the numbers kept climbing. "It's not working," Kixera said, her voice rising. "The core temperature is still increasing. We're at 112% of normal operating range." Within minutes, the entire engineering team crowded around the Core 7 monitoring station. The replacement crew that Veltrak had hired, 12 young technicians with perfect scores and the latest training, worked frantically at their consoles. "I don't understand," one of them muttered. "The AI says this configuration should be stable. The calculations are perfect." Sarnell's hands moved across multiple control panels at once. "Stop relying on the computer and look at the actual readings. Something is causing a resonance cascade in the magnetic field." "What's a resonance cascade?" Kixera asked. The old Corthan's voice was grim. "It means the containment field is fighting against itself. Every adjustment we make creates an echo that makes the problem worse. And we cannot drop out of hyperspace until we stabilize the core, or the transition will tear us apart." Throughout the ship, passengers remained unaware of the crisis brewing below. They sipped exotic drinks and discussed politics and trade agreements. Emperor Zalthor himself was engaged in conversation with the ambassador from the Terran Confederacy, both leaders speaking of peace and cooperation. In engineering, Veltrak arrived, his face pale beneath his blue scales. "Report. What is happening?" "The fusion core is experiencing a catastrophic failure," Sarnell said flatly. "We have perhaps 36 hours before containment breaks completely. When that happens, the explosion will vaporize this entire ship." Veltrak gripped the railing to steady himself. "How is this possible? All systems passed inspection last week. The AI runs continuous diagnostics." "This core is over 200 years old," Sarnell explained, pulling up technical schematics. "It should have been replaced decades ago, but it was built during the old expansion era. They don't make them like this anymore, and we have kept it running because it still worked. But now we face a problem that exists in no modern manual." The young engineers tried everything. They ran simulations. They consulted databases containing millions of repair procedures. They even contacted engineering facilities across the Empire, begging for advice. Nothing worked. Every attempted fix made the resonance worse. 20 hours into the crisis, Kixera noticed something in the old maintenance logs. "Chief, someone successfully repaired a similar cascade failure before. 53 years ago, during the Frontier Wars." Sarnell leaned over her shoulder, reading the faded records. His eyes widened. "Marcus Chin. He manually rebuilt 3 cores of this exact design after they suffered harmonic failures during combat." Veltrak felt his stomach drop. "The human we terminated 3 months ago?" "The same," Sarnell said quietly. "He worked on these ancient systems when they were new. He knows them in ways our computers never will." 16 hours remained. The core temperature continued climbing. Somewhere in the ship's library, children laughed at a puppet show. In the dining halls, beings from across the galaxy shared meals together. And in engineering, Veltrak stared at the communication console, knowing he had to make the most humiliating call of his life. They needed the old human. They needed him desperately. And he might be the only person in the entire galaxy who could save them. Marcus sat in his small apartment on Mars Station, a cup of synthetic coffee growing cold in his hand. Through the window, the red surface of Mars stretched endlessly beneath him. Retirement, he had discovered, was incredibly boring. The quantum communicator on his wall suddenly blazed to life with an emergency priority signal. Marcus frowned. Nobody called him anymore. He activated the screen and found himself staring at a face he had hoped never to see again. Veltrak looked terrible. The young administrator's scales had lost their shine, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Mr. Chen, we need your help." Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee. "That's interesting. Last time we spoke, you told me I was obsolete." "Please," Veltrak said, and Marcus heard genuine fear in his voice. "The Sovereign's glory is trapped in hyperspace. Fusion Core 7 is failing. We have less than 16 hours before it explodes. Everyone aboard will die." Marcus set down his cup. "You have a whole team of young engineers with their fancy computers? What do you need an old man for?" "Because you rebuilt cores like this during the Frontier Wars?" Veltrak said desperately. "We found your repair logs from 53 years ago. You fixed a resonance cascade failure manually. Our AI cannot solve this. Our engineers have tried everything in their training. You are the only person who understands these ancient systems." Marcus stood and walked to the window, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to refuse. Let them see what happened when they threw away experience. But then Veltrak said something that changed everything. Emperor Zalthor is aboard. He is hosting the Concordance Summit. There are over 3,000 souls on this ship, Marcus. Families, children, diplomats trying to build peace between our worlds. Marcus remembered the Emperor. 30 years ago, after Marcus had kept a damaged cruiser running for 6 days straight during a rescue operation, Zalthor himself had presented him with the Stellar Service Medal. The old Emperor had looked him in the eye and said, "You have the heart of an engineer, you build rather than destroy." "I'll help," Marcus said finally. "But I have conditions." Veltrak nodded frantically. "Anything. First, you give me complete control. Your engineers follow my instructions exactly, even when they don't understand why. Second, they turn off the AI diagnostic systems. The computer is giving false readings and making the problem worse. Third, you apologize." Veltrak's face flushed darker. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he bowed his head. "I apologize, Marcus Chin. I was arrogant and foolish. I believed numbers on a screen were more valuable than the wisdom in your hands. I was wrong." Marcus grunted. "Good enough. Patch me through to your engineering deck." Moments later, Marcus found himself looking at a dozen young faces, all staring at him with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Chief Engineer Sarnell stood among them, and the old Corthan's face split into a relieved smile. "Marcus, my friend. I am very glad to see you. Likewise, Sarnell. Now show me the readings." As the data flowed across Marcus's screen, his trained eyes quickly identified the problem. The young engineers had been treating the fusion core like a modern system, trying to fix it with precision adjustments and computer calculations. But these old cores were different. They had personalities, quirks, tolerances that existed nowhere in any manual. "Listen carefully," Marcus said, rolling up his sleeves even though he was hundreds of millions of kilometers away. "We're going to do this the old way. You're going to work with your hands, your ears, and your instincts. Forget what the computers tell you. I'm going to teach you how these old girls actually work." A young Zentari engineer named Kixera stepped forward. "Mr. Chin, the communication link keeps breaking up because of the hyperspace distortion. What if we lose contact with you?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Then you better learn fast. We've got 15 hours and 32 minutes to save the Emperor, save 3,000 lives, and prove that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Now, who's ready to get their hands dirty?" Marcus's face flickered on the holographic display as the communication link wavered. "First thing," he said, pointing at the nearest computer terminal. "Shut down the AI diagnostics on Core 7. All of it." The young engineers looked at each other nervously. Kixera raised her hand hesitantly. "But Mr. Chin, without the AI, how will we know what the core is doing?" "With these," Marcus held up his weathered hands. "And these." He pointed to his ears. "These old cores sing to you if you know how to listen. The AI is reading false harmonics because it doesn't understand that ancient fusion cores breathe. They expand and contract like living things." Sarnell nodded and began shutting down the computer systems. Warning messages flashed across every screen, but he ignored them. Within minutes, the engineering bay fell eerily quiet. The constant beeping and digital readouts disappeared. "Now," Marcus continued, "Kixera, I need you to go to the core chamber access. Put your hand on the outer housing. Tell me what you feel." The young Zentari woman approached the massive cylindrical core housing nervously. She pressed her palm against the metal surface. "It's warm. It's vibrating. I can feel a rhythm, but it's irregular." "Good. That irregular rhythm is the problem. The magnetic field generators are fighting each other, creating waves that bounce back and forth. Every time the computer tried to fix it, it added another wave. Now we need to drain that energy manually." For the next 6 hours, Marcus walked the engineering team through procedures that existed in no modern manual. He had them construct a bypass system using spare parts and scrap metal, connecting components in ways that made the young engineers shake their heads in disbelief. "This shouldn't work," one technician muttered, holding a jury-rigged coupling made from 3 different incompatible parts. "It will work because it has to," Marcus replied. "I learned this trick from a Kilrathi engineer during the war. When you don't have the right parts, you make the wrong parts work together." The communication link flickered and died for 10 agonizing minutes. When it returned, Marcus's voice was breaking up. "Losing signal strength. Listen carefully. Someone needs to enter the core chamber and manually realign the magnetic field generators. You'll have a 3-minute window when the containment field drops to 30%. Sarnell's face went pale. "Marcus, the radiation exposure at 30% containment will be fatal, even with our best shielding suits." "I know," Marcus said quietly. But your shielding suits were damaged in the initial cascade, weren't they? Sarnell checked the equipment locker. 3 suits hung there, all showing red warning indicators. Yes. They're all compromised. Then you'll need to build improvised shielding. Kixera, are you listening? The young engineer stepped forward, her scales trembling slightly. Yes, sir. You're small and quick. You'll need to be the one to go in. Here's what you need to do. For the next 2 hours, Marcus taught Kixera how to construct makeshift radiation shielding using emergency blankets lined with lead sheeting from the cargo bay, sealed with thermal paste meant for hull repairs. It looked ridiculous, like a silver cocoon with arms, but Marcus insisted it would provide just enough protection. You'll have 3 minutes inside, Marcus explained. Use the torque wrench, not the power tools. The magnetic fields will interfere with anything electronic. You need to turn each generator 45 degrees counterclockwise. Work by touch. The chamber will be nearly dark to reduce energy drain. Kixera suited up, her hands shaking as she sealed the improvised shielding. Through the speakers they could all hear the core's dying song, a warbling, unstable hum that spoke of imminent collapse. Emperor Zalthor himself entered the engineering bay. The ancient ruler walked slowly to where Kixera stood. Young one, the Empire will remember your courage. He turned to the holographic image of Marcus. And you, old friend. Show them what human determination can accomplish. Marcus smiled. We've got 47 minutes left. Let's get to work. The core chamber access hatch opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Kixera stood at the threshold, wrapped in her makeshift shielding, staring into the swirling blue light beyond. The heat washed over her even through the protective layers. I'm scared, she whispered. Marcus's voice crackled through her helmet speaker. Fear means you're smart. Now turn that fear into focus. Remember, 45 degrees counterclockwise on each generator. You've got this, kid. Kixera stepped inside. The radiation alarms immediately began screaming. The chamber was a cathedral of pulsing energy, with 6 massive magnetic field generators arranged in a circle around the blazing fusion core. In the dim emergency lighting, everything looked like it was underwater. First generator is right in front of you, Marcus said. Reach out. Feel for the manual override wheel. Her gloved hands found the wheel. It was hot even through her protection. She gripped the torque wrench and fitted it onto the wheel. It won't turn, she grunted, putting all her strength into it. It's been sitting in one position for decades. Put your back into it. Don't think about the radiation counter. Just focus on the wheel. Kixera braced her feet and pulled. The wheel suddenly gave way, rotating with a deep grinding sound. 45 degrees. The core's hum changed slightly, dropping in pitch. Good. That's one. Move clockwise to the next generator. You're doing great. Outside the chamber, the engineering team watched the readouts. The temperature had stopped climbing, but it wasn't dropping yet. Sarnell counted down the seconds. 2 minutes, 40 seconds remaining. The second generator fought her even harder. Kixera's arms burned with effort. Sweat poured down her face inside the helmet. The radiation counter in her suit ticked upward relentlessly. Marcus, I can't, it's stuck. Yes, you can, Marcus said firmly. You're stronger than you think. Use your legs. Push up from your core. The Empire is counting on you. She roared with effort and the wheel turned. 2 down. The third generator went smoothly. The fourth made a horrible screeching sound but eventually moved. 4 down, 2 to go. 1 minute, 50 seconds, Sarnell called out. Kixera stumbled toward the 5th generator. Her vision was blurring. The heat was overwhelming. She could barely feel her hands anymore. Talk to me, Kixera, Marcus said. What do you see? Everything's spinning. The light is so bright. That's the radiation affecting your vision. Don't look at the core. Focus on my voice. Find the wheel. You've done this 4 times already. Just 2 more. Her hands found the wheel by memory now. Turn. 45 degrees. The core's song changed again, becoming smoother, more stable. Last one, Marcus said. You're almost there. 1 minute, 10 seconds. You can make it. Kixera dragged herself to the 6th generator. Her legs barely held her weight. The radiation counter was deep into the red zone. She fitted the wrench onto the wheel and pulled with everything she had left. Nothing happened. It won't move, she gasped. Marcus, it won't move. 45 seconds, Kixera. You have to get out of there, Sarnell shouted. No, Marcus said quietly. Not yet. Kixera reversed the wrench. Sometimes these old mechanisms seize up. You need to push clockwise first to break it free, then pull counterclockwise. Her hands fumbled with the wrench. She reversed it. Push. Something cracked inside the mechanism. Then she pulled. The wheel turned. 45 degrees. The fusion core's hum suddenly smoothed into a deep, steady rhythm. The swirling energy stabilized. Throughout the ship, lights that had been flickering returned to full brightness. "Get out. Now!" Marcus yelled. Kixera stumbled out of the chamber. The hatch sealed behind her. She collapsed on the deck and the medical team rushed forward. The Sovereign's glory dropped out of hyperspace above the Concordance summit station, battered but intact. In the medical bay, Kixera opened her eyes to see Emperor Zalthor standing beside her bed. "You saved us all, young engineer," the Emperor said softly. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood once again aboard the Sovereign's glory, but this time in a new role. A classroom full of young engineers from a dozen species sat before him, eager and attentive. Kixera, recovered from her radiation exposure, sat in the front row. "Today," Marcus began, "I'm going to teach you something your computers can't. I'm going to teach you how to listen to the machines, how to feel what they're telling you, and how sometimes the oldest solutions are still the best ones." Veltrak watched from the doorway, no longer an administrator but a student himself. He had requested the reassignment personally. Emperor Zalthor had granted Marcus's wishes. Mandatory retirement ages were abolished. Experience was valued alongside innovation. And throughout the Imperial fleet, a new program began, one where the old ways and new ways would work together. Marcus smiled at his students. "Now, who wants to learn how to rebuild a fusion core with nothing but a torque wrench and determination?" Every hand in the room went up.